I'm just going to show you the settings I use for landscape photography. This is really for black and white. I used to do a lot of landscape photography about 15 years ago, and I used to use FP4 film. Mainly, I went through a lot of different films, but I ended up at FP4, and the combination I liked was mainly with an orange filter. So an orange filter would darken blue skies and make the clouds a bit more prominent. I used to always, every now and then I'd use a red filter, which really pushed the blue to black. But I just thought I'd show you, I mean, this is 15 years later and 2018, and I'm thinking about, well, I am going back doing more landscape photography, doing a lot of workshops and teaching. So I just thought I'd show you the settings I'm using. So it's a 5D Mark 1 Classic. Very simple menu, but just a few tips. So quality, I produce a RAW file and a large JPEG. The RAW file is obviously in colour and is kept, hasn't been touched by any processing in the camera. So I'm making a RAW file. I'm also bracketing the exposures to produce maybe 3 RAW files, one darker one for the skies and a lighter one for the foreground. But I'm producing a large JPEG in the camera because I find that this camera produces very nice results straight out of the camera if you like black and white. I'm just going to whiz through these. The beep is off. Shoot without card is always off, because if you leave that on, obviously if you haven't put a card in, and you can go out for half a day and end up realizing that you haven't had a card in. So always put shoot without card is always off. The bracketing, AEB for landscapes. I mean, when I'm doing weddings I don't use it, but this is where you can bracket and you can produce a dark, a medium and a light image and combine them later on. But we'll do another video about that, I think. Just coming down. White balance is still, you know, mainly taken care of. Auto white balance. The camera does an okay job outside, and I've got the RAW file anyway. And to be honest, 99% of what I do in the landscape is black and white. I might do some colour through the spring, and obviously some in the autumn, but you know, I like black and white. So let's carry on down. Color temperature 5200K. So if I want to use a K value, I can use that. And this is where the picture style comes in. This is what I want to show you today. So the picture style, you can define different characteristics of the image, and this is for the JPEG. So the RAW file, imagine, has gone straight onto the card, is the original color file. But what I do is I define what I'd like the image to look like for the JPEG. So we'll come back to that one, but the first thing you need to do, which I think really helps with this camera, scroll right to the bottom, go into custom functions, and the preset for custom function number 1 is on 0, and that just makes the set button, which is that one in the middle of the wheel, it's just its default setting, no function. Well, what I do is I change that, and so it becomes the picture style button. What that means is when you're generally working, you can just hit the set button and all your picture styles come up, which is good, because what I've defined in this menu is an orange filter and a red filter and a standard monochrome image. If you're into color photography, you might define one as neutral with a completely neutral profile, and the next one you might add some contrast, and the next one you might add more contrast, etc. But I just thought I'd show you what I'm using. That's all I can really do, is show you what I'm doing. So I'm into monochrome photography, obviously. So what I'm doing is defining, and you click the jump button. So when you highlighted, click the jump button. So just showing you that sharpness I set to 0, and the reason I do that is from talking to printers. Now, when they've got 30 years of experience, these are the people you need to talk to really. And what they prefer is a completely unsharpened image so that they can add sharpening just before the printing stage for the different size of image. So a good thing to get into is setting 0 sharpening in Lightroom, and don't sharpen your images at all. If they're going to go on the web, obviously apply the sharpening that you need for web, but it's better to have all of your images in stock, all of your files unsharpened as JPEGs if you're going to output as JPEGs. That's only a tip. Comment below, obviously, in the video. I know there's going to be a lot of talk about whether you should sharpen them or not, but this is through talking to professional printers. So always have 0 sharpening on every profile. Contrast for this particular profile, this is just the monochrome profile, is going to be at 0. Because I just want the file as it comes out of the camera, the Canon have really, they put a lot of work into this. I think it's ignored a lot, and everyone jumps into Lightroom and they fiddle around with images. But if you actually take the files straight out of these cameras, especially the 5D Mark I, you'll be amazed how good they are. So contrast is at 0, and filter effect, which you can have at yellow, orange, red, green, I have on none. So I don't want any filter effect on this one, and I don't want a toning effect. So that's the first profile. So that would be an image where I walk up to it and I take the image, I look at the back of the screen, and I might think, well, I actually want the effect of an orange filter. So what I've defined in user define 1 is monochrome still. So this is exactly the same as the one we've just done, but I always do that. Sorry about that. Let me go back. So it's jump to get into the profile. And the only difference here is the 0 sharpening. I've reduced the contrast slightly because I'm going to put an orange filter on. Now an orange filter will make the image slightly more contrasty. And as I say, it will change the characteristics of the image. And this is something you've got to try. You might put the contrast right down. You might increase the contrast. But this is what I've come to, is just one step down on the contrast and an orange filter. Now that would be for a lot of my landscapes. And I might also combine images. So I might, it's equivalent to split contrast printing in the darkroom. So I might use one image with an orange filter that takes care of the sky, and I might use another image that is the straight monochrome image where you've got the full tonal range for the actual landscape part of the image. But these are advanced techniques. This is pretty much what I'm setting my camera up as, is pretty much coming straight out of a darkroom. So if you imagine the last time I was doing landscape photography, digital cameras didn't really exist. And I was printing, I was using split contrast techniques. So I'm bringing this forward. Obviously, this camera is 13 years old, but you know, if you're watching this video, obviously you're going to have one. So these are great techniques. So I've set the orange filter, toning effect none. If we go down to user define 2, doing it again, you always click jump. Number of times I do that. So set gets you into it, and then jump lets you define everything you need about that particular setting. So again, monochrome, sharpness 0, down on the contrast, but I've added a red filter. So this is when I want to really make a punchy sky, and you're making a statement with this sky. And this is something, it's one of those love-hate things really. I had a red filter permanently connected to a 24mm Sigma lens about, I think 25 years ago. I mean, I'm getting old now, but 25 years ago. And if you look at the majority of my landscape portfolio, it would have been done with this red filter technique. So I've put it in there. I'm not necessarily going towards red now. I'd probably stick at orange. So, you know, I've just put it in there for the odd time that I want to increase contrast and I want a more punchy sky. So that's that one. Let's see if we can get it wrong again. No, I'm getting the hang of it now. There you go. So we scroll down to 3. So we'll click jump. Now this is an interesting one. Sharpness 0, contrast down slightly, and I've done a green filter. Now what green does really well, if you imagine you've got all the shades of green in the foliage in a scene, so it might be grass, trees, a mixed bag, and you've got all those shades of green. What green does really well is it breaks up those tones in black and white. So a good effect would be to use the landscape as a green filter, and then maybe use an orange for the sky. And these are things, I mean, as I again go right back, they actually did split filters, and they were orange for the sky, green for the landscape, and that's what we used to do. But now, because we're in digital, obviously we can do this in camera, and we can produce a black and white image that is perfect for the landscape, well exposed, splitting all the tones up, and then we can use the orange to do the sky to make it a bit more punchy. And you can mix these together and use a tripod, you know, take 3 images, you can focus, stack. So digital has opened up a lot for black and white photographers. I'm enjoying it again. I've obviously had some time off. I've been doing weddings for, well, 13 years, so it's not I've finished weddings, I'm carrying on, but I'm just going back into the landscape, so I thought you might be interested in what I'm doing. So that's the final one. That's pretty much what I'm set up. So I'm out and about, I can hit the set button. I've got my settings, normal monochrome, I might take 1 image, and then I've got my orange filter, my red filter, and my green filter. And the different effects that has, that's the way you'll learn black and white photography, is by learning what these filters are doing, looking at contrast, and making JPEGs out the camera is a very good start. You can print directly out the camera, you can send them off to Ilford, have them printed there, that's what I do. So I hope that helps. It's not a very long video, but it's mainly for monochrome photographers. Maybe I'll do one about colour photography. You've got some more settings up here. You've got a landscape setting. You can define the landscape. That's the colour image. And again, you can get the sharpening down, 0 sharpening. You can bring the contrast down. Contrast control is very important in images. If it's the one thing that you want to tackle, what's going on with contrast and dynamic range. And most of what I'm doing with digital now is really split contrast printing. So I hope that helps. That'll set you up for now. I'll try and do another little video about different settings. And if you've got any questions or comments, just comment below. If you've got some ideas of what you've been using and what you like, just put it below. If you do want to get, when you subscribe now, YouTube have done this thing where you've got to click the bell. So you'll see a little bell next to the subscribe button. If you're wondering why you're not getting an email when these videos go up, then just click the bell and you'll definitely get an email then. If you're not, then comment below, because you should be. So I hope that helps with the 5D. I have actually done an Instagram page now. I've been dragged into the 2018 reluctantly, but I can see that Instagram will fit quite well with YouTube. So I'm going to do an Instagram page. I can't see any colour photography going up there. It's just going to mainly be black and white, street photography, landscape photography, just my day-to-day life really. So it's worth going over to the Instagram page. I'll do a link. It's @richbarley. So take a look. There's not much up there now, but keep an eye on that and follow me, and we'll see what we can do over 2018. Okay, thank you. Hope that helps.